Call the Village of North Fond du Lac meeting trustee to order Monday, May 7th, 2018. Audience members are requested to sign in the sheet provided at the registration table. Citizens wishing to be heard on topics not listed on the agenda may speak under item C. Roll call of officers.
Keith King.
Here.
Ann Price.
Here.
Mike Streeter.
Here.
And Mike Will.
Price for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any citizen participation? All right, moving down to announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? Mike, did you want to mention North Fond du Fest again, or? Sure. North Fond du Fest, June 16th. We're starting at like 4:30 this year. No parade, no run walk. Just due to lack of volunteers, we kind of had to shorten up the day a bit. So we're going to start out with is it pulled pork? Is it? Yeah, pulled pork dinner over at the park. And I think we're doing 100, and then they're gone. We're going to have Jake, what's the name of your band again?
Flybridge?
Flybridge?
Yep.
All right, our new fire chief is going to be out with his band, like from 4:30 onto Boogie and the Yo-Yo's plays. They'll be out playing, so come out and see our fire chief and his band. There'll be softball going on, bag toss, I believe. Adam didn't come over last night to verify that, but that's what we're planning on. Then the band starts at 8 o'clock. And the raffle prize this year again is $5,000, and then there's a lot of great prizes on there. So those tickets, there's a mix-up down at Haber. We're supposed to get them today, but we will be getting them in a couple of days. So those will be on sale soon, and they're $10.
Where will they be selling them?
Pardon me?
Where will they be selling them?
BP.
The board, I think any kind of committee member, BP.
Did we take them out to the stretch last year? I can't remember.
We took them out to the stretch, we took them out to Wentz.
Butcher's Block?
I'm not sure if I don't know if Travis.
Few in the past, I'm not sure about Butcher Block, I'm sure we would probably plan.
Yeah, Sherry would probably pop over there and just see if he's willing to do that. There's a lot of
I
folks still
dropped a
going
few
there.
off at the Jim's bar, I think I dropped a few up there too, so.
So anything to add, Mike, or?
Nope, I'm good.
All right.
Probably could have here some at the office as well. right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So more to follow on that. And this weekend, Plug in the Letter Carrier Food Drive is on Saturday, May 12th. So when you get the blue bags, please fill them up, and we'll pick them up Saturday morning. Put them out as early as possible, please. All right, moving down to the public hearing. We're going to adjourn to public hearing. Public hearing for ordinance 2018-4, an ordinance establishing a municipal court. Does anybody in the audience have anything to say about the ordinance? Second call, any comments on the ordinance? Third call, any comments on the ordinance? And we discussed this last meeting. Do we want to?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, then we're going to adjourn from the public hearing. Moving down to President's Business, Library.
I have a couple items that Heather passed on to me. This week, they are working on the summer reading program details and promotional flyers, paperwork, since early sign-up starts Friday, June 1st. In addition, the children's librarian has scheduled vacation time during May and June, so they are trying to make cover for it while she is gone. Hannah's wrapping up her school year story time schedule, which will conclude with Tea Party next Thursday and Friday. School visits to promote programming will take place May 14th through the 18th. And their next book club meeting for on-track readers will discuss The Rose by Louise Erdrich from 9 to 10 on Saturday, May 19th. The library will be closed for Memorial Day weekend from Saturday, May 26th through Monday, May 28th. Our summer hours schedule begins with this holiday weekend. They will not be open on Saturdays during the summer months. And finally, the new Facebook book review idea where reliable reader review is going well. That means where people who are reading a particular book that's been noted, they can post their views on the book, and they had over 500 on this first one, so it's going quite well. Second post had over 700. So every Thursday or Friday, a new book review is posted. They're asking if anybody interested in seeing the post, please like our Spillman Public Library Facebook page. If you are interested in reviewing a book you love, just let me know. I will schedule a Facebook post with your review. Heather's goal is to bring attention to our library materials and our great patrons.
Hey Chuck, can we have Heather, I don't know if the rest of the board members, I know Mike and Ann are getting the agendas, but Keith, are you interested in getting an agenda, like when the library board comes up, the library board meeting?
Sure.
Because I think that would be a good idea, just in case something like piques our interest. And I know Mike dropped off the, thing that said a quorum might be.
Yes,
Okay,
the language for that.
yeah, and, yeah, I think that's it. Okay. All right, administrator.
This coming Wednesday from 2 to 4 is the annual Board of Review. That's what allows residents who have made appointments to come in and just discuss their assessment to see if some adjustments can be made. Started the process of the annual licensing review. That is, again, the renewal of licenses for liquor, cigarette, and non-intoxicating beverages. I've started working on setting up the iPads for the village board. I'm going to be introducing that tonight to see if they want to move forward with it. I have one that I have set up and just want to demonstrate how it can work, and if that does work, I'll purchase some more for the rest of the board members. Thank you.
All righty. Thanks, Chuck. Police department.
Thank you. Let's see, Saturday, April 28th was a drug drop. It's a national take-back event. Because we have a 24-hour, I'm sorry, not 24-hour, we have a permanent drug drop box here at the police department. We don't actually take part in the drug drop date, but we take advantage of the opportunity to get rid of the stuff that we've collected since the last drug drop, which would have been in October. So last Monday, we actually were able to move out of here 78 pounds of unused, unwanted prescription medications. That's a new record for us. It's great to see that the box is continuing to be utilized, especially since there are now, I think, 11 different sites in Fond du Lac County where people can drop those things off. So if you're unaware of it, just go to the website and take a look at it. All the details are there regarding the hours of the drug drop and how to get rid of your unwanted medications.
One quick question, you had said prescription, but what about the non-prescription?
It's everything.
It's everything.
The intent when it originally came out was to get rid of unused, unwanted prescription medications. It's now being utilized for, people are bringing in vitamins, they're bringing in aspirin. We actually have people bringing in pet medications that are no longer being used. So it's a great way to safely dispose of all of that stuff, which is obviously good for the environment as well, so.
Thank you.
That 78 pounds, when was the last time? How long a period did it take?
October was the last
Okay.
date that we would have got rid of it, so.
6 months?
Yep, 6 months.
Okay, thanks.
Last Monday, we completed our spring shoot. We shoot as a department 3 times a year. Spring and fall, we do the state qualification shoot. So everybody went through that last Monday. And I just wanted to thank Ripon Police Department for allowing us to utilize their range to conduct the training. Squad update, you'll recall that each year we replace a squad in the fleet. Originally, we had ordered the new squad, I think, in November. And then in December, we lost one due to an accident, and it ended up being totaled up by the insurance company. So one of the new cars came in this past week. It's set up. It's out on the road. Right now, we're at 4. The next new squad is arriving next week. So 25 is getting torn down this week. So we'll be back down to 3 squads for a little bit while the new one gets set up. But then we'll be back to our 4, and hopefully that'll be the end of things for a while.
Darren, is that the end of the squad cars then, or are we going to be all the SUV type?
Yeah, the car that gets torn down this week is the last sedan. They'll all be SUVs after that.
Okay.
And then a hiring update. Last week I completed 2 more chiefs interviews. This week we're starting background investigations on at least 2 candidates that we're interested in. So hopefully we'll be making an offer here in the next week or so. That's all I have.
Thanks, Darren. Fire EMS, Jake.
Thank you. An update on the Stop the Bleed campaign. It's kind of blown up quite a bit in our county. we were out in Lamartine last week doing a training to get more instructors involved. I've been working closely with Brenda Kissinger from St. Agnes. She's our EMS liaison, to get more departments in our area where ambulance serves certified as instructors. So there's a bigger pool. The hospital's been getting a lot of requests for classes, including like 250, 500 people. That's kind of what they're looking at. So that's been going well. The school should be, or North Fond du Lac School District should be ordering their kits sooner than later. Eric Butler sat down with Superintendent Sadoff to figure out what kits they were going to buy, and so those should be going into the schools soon. Right now, I have 2 new cadets that will be joining the department. One of them is 18. He's a senior at Horseman, and then one's 17. He's a junior at Horseman. So they'll be starting sooner than later, which is a great thing for us to get younger guys in the department. Both of them, well, one of them applied to Fox Valley to go to their fire protection program. He got accepted to start this fall, and then the other one obviously has to finish out high school, and he plans on doing the same thing. The association got their raffle tickets ready, so sooner than later we'll have those out available for purchase. We have 500 tickets, $20 a ticket. Top prize is $1,000, and then it goes down from there. I think there's a total of 30 prizes. I'd have to look at the tickets, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're at.
When is the drawing for that?
October, that's not far enough out. It's the second Saturday in October.
Only
I think it's the 13th.
thing I'm wondering is, I'm not sure how soon you'd want to, do you think that's conflicting a little bit with North Fondy Fest? You know what I mean, if they're trying to sell tickets too?
Yeah, we typically wait, because I know the Optimist Club has their raffle tickets, so we wait until they're done selling, and then we start selling.
North Fondy Fest, you mean, or Optimist?
Optimist.
They're done on the 17th of May. So I think that's
Yeah,
that's
so
the
we
drawing.
typically don't start until
But
after
maybe-
they're done.
Because then the 16th of June is North Fondy Fest, and didn't know if you want to consider not saturating, I'm just.
We
throwing
won't
it.
we most likely won't be selling them there. Like, we won't bring them along with
Okay,
us.
okay.
I don't think that we did last year. I don't recall doing that. I know that we sold raffle tickets 2 years ago at North Fondy Fest, but I don't think that we'll bring them along, if that's an issue. So, today we went out and got some ducks out of a storm drain, which is more of a typical call of service. Last night we got a phone call. I got a call from dispatch. It was like 8 or 8:30 last night that somebody had flown a drone that got stuck on top of a roof over in Harrison Street Apartments. So a reminder on that: make sure that if you're flying those things, you don't lose track of them and lose them on top of a roof. I'm not exactly sure what happened. It's a younger gentleman that has the drone, and we actually went to the high school and worked out today, and we talked to the kid that had the drone, and he wasn't 100% sure what happened, but he thanked us for coming and getting it off the roof, because he said he tried for about 2 hours to get it off and couldn't get it off. So we went to Sunbelt last week. I did with our fire inspector to set up a plan, because they have more than 1,000 pounds of sulfuric acid because of the batteries that they have there. They also have 2 500-gallon storage containers. So emergency management sets up a evacuation plan and a disaster plan for the facility. So I went and met with Bobby Hicken and Shelley Giebel from Fond du Lac County, and got that plan done. We'll be going to Van Dyne tomorrow night. They were lucky enough to get a house donated to them to use for training, so we'll be able to do all of our hands-on skills, which is huge, to be able to practice that stuff in outside of a not so much controlled, because obviously it'll be controlled out there, but to get into the real aspect of it and not being on a training prop. because everything in a training prop is pretty much designed and made for firefighting activities, whereas, you know, somebody's house isn't, so that is good that way. I saw the email was included in the packet from the school district. We had met with them on autism. So they came here, did a presentation on how our EMS providers and even firefighters, if we get into a situation with an autistic child or an adult, how we can be better prepared to assist them. And I think it was a really good training. We came up with a lot of different ideas and actually met with them the following day or day after that to try to start planning for the new projects coming up. So I'll have more information on that as we move forward. But they are very eager to make changes and make things better for us responding to these houses. And that is all I have.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank
I
you.
think that autism project is a real great initiative.
Yeah.
I think that's good for you.
And they shared it throughout the district, so everybody, you know, got a
Yep.
copy
Yeah,
of
it'll-
that.
yeah.
So that
it's-
was nice to see that.
It's definitely gonna expand rapidly, I
Thank you.
think. So, which is good.
Thanks, Jake. Nick, Public Works?
Thank you. Chuck and I met with MSA last week to discuss the Phase 2 that you're aware of that we did on the former Zox Auto Salvage site. What the Phase 2 does, basically, the Phase 1 study kind of identifies that, yeah, there's probability of some contamination on the site. The Phase 2 actually goes out there and does test holes and test wells and verifies or if there is contaminants there. They did find some, nothing too alarming, nothing, in his words, not real surprising, and definitely not something that can't be overcome. It is kind of localized on one part of the property for the most part, so we're hopeful, working with the DNR, we can maybe divide the parcel, the 8 to 10 acres into maybe 2 parcels, that one of them may be able to be built on, and the other one, they can both be built on, or just have to maybe cap the other area and put, it might have to be parking lot or buildings without basements or anything, which is probably a good idea over there anyways, because it's right next to the lake. So, I think it's good news, but we still need to move forward with the DNR, and we're gonna work out a little bit of some meetings with MSA and meet with the DNR and talk through that and see what route we may be able to go. The landscapers are the next step on Indiana Avenue. The concrete's all done. After last week's rain, I thought the landscapers wouldn't even show up this week. They actually showed up today. So they started putting topsoil in today. When they're done, which I would suspect to be pretty close by the end of the week, then the asphalt, they always like to try and get the landscapers in first, so they're not driving their equipment on fresh asphalt. So hopefully, the asphalt company will be in, maybe as soon as next week, that road could be done, so. It's moving along, you know, depending on the weather, of course. And then, that's the last thing I have to report on, was last week, between Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and Thursday night, Friday morning, we had over 6 inches of rain in the village in 48 hours, which is an enormous amount of rain, as everyone knows. We had over 4 inches on that Thursday night, so Friday was interesting around here. We had plenty of flooded streets, which, you know, I think we fared quite well considering the circumstances. Of course, if you were one of the people that had water in your basement, you probably don't agree with me there, but as of right now, we're thinking in the neighborhood, we're verified at least 6 basements that have flooded. And guessing there's a few more that we just didn't hear about, but considering how much rain we got, that's pretty good for the village, considering the history we have. Our 3.5 million gallon sanitary overflow tank was utilized, which it's not utilized as much as it used to be. So it's a pretty good indication of when things are really wet, that thing was almost filled. So and what we do with that is basically it pumps it up into there, and we hold on to it until we call the city and ask them when they're ready for it. And I called them this morning, and they said, yep, go ahead and send it. So we started draining that this morning about 9 o'clock, and by the end of the day, maybe about half of it is drained out. So probably overnight, the rest of it will get out of there, so that tank's available for storage again.
So the question is, how full did it fill? I mean, did it?
Almost full.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so.
Next quick question is prospect. Is there anything in the future plans to maybe address that flooding issue?
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
short-
there's really, unfortunately, to be short of raising the road, there's nothing we can do, because basically what that ditch that backs up it goes into Supley's Marsh. And we can maybe alleviate, we need to look at down the road a little bit of where it goes to Supley Marsh, that it might be restricted slightly. But unfortunately, there's no way we can get rid of the water any quicker. So it, you know, short, like I said, short of raising the road, that's unfortunate. And it does, you know, that's the first area that kind of shows up. What was interesting this time is the area up at Thirk and Chapleau, which usually almost always floods, didn't flood.
You did some improvements up there, didn't you?
Not really. I mean, so that was interesting. But anyways, that is, to answer your question, that's something we've looked at. It's just, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. You know, it's just a little bit, that area of the street is low, and that's where the water ends up. So, to answer the question at this point, no.
Yeah, thank you.
So Nick, I know we moved forward that condemnation at 1011 Wisconsin.
We did. Yeah, I can give you an update on that. We filed the paperwork to move forward with condemnation. About the same time they put it up for sale, the realtor confirmed, I believe today, that they are taking it down.
Okay, good, because I saw that on numerous sites.
Yep, and we had plenty of calls, and because they were asking like $17,000.
Yeah.
But we're pretty certain that the owner, which is a bank, is going to take it down.
Yeah, especially after that rain, geez.
Yep. So we don't have to, because if they don't, then after 30 days, we have to take it down. We have to get the contract. So it's a
Gotcha.
lot more work for us that way. So we're hopeful that this works out this way.
Okay, cool. Is that all you had, Nick, or
That's all I have.
Keith?
Thank you. I just have a question about the convent, the old
Yep.
convent. I
Can
noticed
address
that
that, too.
there was a call.
I can address that. So, not to get into too many specifics, and I can talk to you after the meeting, but that is being addressed. I know the police were there last week. There was a letter sent out basically telling to cease and desist all living there.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Alrighty. Moving down to the consent agenda. Approve the minutes of the following village board meetings, 4/23/2018, and approve invoices and authorized checks to be drawn on the respective funds. Board meeting, May 7, 2018, checks dated 4/30/2018. General fund, $23,013.20. Library fund, $597.73. EMS fund, $1,011.99. Water department, $6,562.22. Wastewater department, $9,377.11. Stormwater fund, $2,572.63 for a grand total of $43,134.88. And for the other bills that we have from 5/7, general fund, $151,750.94. Library fund, $345.50. EMS fund, $36.68. Capital projects, $699. Water department, $24.88. Wastewater department, $24.88. Stormwater fund, $21.62, for a grand total of $152,910.50. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
And a second?
I second that motion.
Got a motion by Will, second by Price, to approve the consent agenda. Is there any questions?
I have one question on that 4/30, 2018, page 1. That American Family claim, just kind of curious if that, what that entailed. That's actually
187.
187, thank you.
Not sure what that's for. I know we had some, I'm not sure.
You can
I
get
will have
that.
to find that out.
All right, thank you.
Keith?
Yeah, same page, 305, airing equipment. Cylinder for $1,100, hose assembly for $99, and a rear window for $1,113. Is that for one of the DPW pieces of equipment?
Well, being it's a cylinder, I'd have to.
The tractor backhoe, I believe.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
I think it was the tractor backhoe.
Okay. rear window flew out of it?
Yeah, I think it was, because I unloaded that off the truck, the window. But yeah, I don't remember how it happened, but it was quite a while ago.
Okay, I'm just kidding. And then, down on the bottom, 848 California Contractors, pair of gloves for $95.76.
I can look up the invoice, but I'm sure it's more than one pair of gloves.
Okay.
They're usually
I'm
buying
just
by-
looking, you know.
I think it's probably a case of them.
And I had one more. There's a book from somewhere for $72 and I lost it. I apologize.
Pennyworth Company?
Yes, thank you.
Which one was it?
I know books are expensive. I
Pennyworth
just,
Company.
thank you.
It's a 160, so it's a library. I'd have to see.
Okay.
which one, so
All right.
It's a,
Yeah, I think she orders like, you know, like from one.
So it
company,
wasn't just one book,
numerous-
maybe?
No, no.
Like
just
there wasn't one
numerous.
pair of gloves
Yeah.
for $95.
It is pluralized.
Is there any other questions? Mike?
No, comment. I just, I'm not questioning the expense, I just want to make a comment on, same invoice date, it's page 3, PD shop test. I just want to let you know that the state of Wisconsin's going away from making that mandatory for the employees. We've always had to have one once a year at best. The state of Wisconsin no longer makes it mandatory. If you want one, they allow it. I'm not saying we should, but I'm just saying the state of Wisconsin is going away. I don't feel that there's that
TV
much of a
test.
risk
which one is
anymore.
it?
I'm not- I think it's the top
Oh,
of the
there.
third page.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, I have to say.
So our paramedics have to go into the OR to do innovations.
Okay.
That's state required, and St. Agnes requires us to go and get the TB test done, so that's where that's coming from. So, yeah.
All right, any other discussion?
Nope.
All righty. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Moving down to H, administration discussion and possible action on approving the 2017 financial report presented by Baker Tilly representatives.
Yes.
Good evening.
Thanks for having us again. But also thanks for asking questions about the invoices. Nice to see that. I'm familiar to all of you, I believe. I'm John Ritter, and
Should be.
I've brought along with me this Cameron Sawyer. And Cameron is not new to the audit, he's been on it for the last couple of years. But he was the in-charge on it this year, did a great job, and was very involved with it. It's also a great opportunity for him to come out and see his mom, which is going to be right after that.
Nice.
So it was a win-win situation. As we go through the materials, just like in the past, if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to stop and ask me, or you can wait till the end. It really doesn't matter to me at all. I do encourage you to ask questions. Just to let you know where we're at, I'm going to be focusing on the graphs and highlights that we've done for the last several years with you, versus kind of flipping through a bunch of pages in the financials. We also haven't issued finals of the financial statements yet. We are waiting on, I think, one, maybe two one attorney letter, and a couple small administrative items, as well as your approval tonight, I believe.
I think that last letter came in the mail.
Okay.
I just saw that
Do you want
yesterday
to
or
sit
today.
maybe at the desk or something? I don't know if that's,
Well, I just get a carbon copy.
I mean, I don't know if that speaker's working.
I was gonna ask that too.
Okay. John, you can sit down in this chair if you want, because that.
I can
that
put a microphone, I'm
Okay.
gonna put this one up there.
That microphone doesn't seem to be in.
You're right.
Yeah, we'll make it.
Is that better?
Try it again. Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yep, we got you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
good. So I would anticipate that we are going to be able to release finals of your reports this week. That would be my expectation, so that'll be good. We do a couple other reports for you. Two of them, they both get filed, one for the TIFs that you had, the two TIFs to the Department of Revenue. Those have been completed. And another one that's called Form C that gets reported, that determines your state aids, and that's been submitted as well, way ahead of schedule. So that's, I think, we're in a good place. The one thing I want to mention before we kind of walk through these pages is that we issued what we call a unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion on your financial statements. It's the highest level of assurance you can receive from an external CPA firm. So we've been able to do that year after year, and that's a good thing. We want to keep that going. All right, so does everybody have a copy of the?
Yes.
Okay, they do. Okay, good.
So similar to what we've looked at last year, just these are kind of some benchmarks where you ended at the end of the year. We'll look at the general fund, your governmental operations, and then look at each one of the utilities in brief as well. But on page 1, this is a pie chart. The focus here, or the the purpose is to show you the breakdown of what makes up your general fund balance at the end of the year. And fund balance, think of what's left at the end of the year if your primary operating account, your general fund, collected everything that was owed and paid all its bills, what would it have left? And that can be broken down into 5 different areas. In the village, you have 3 of those. The first one is called non-spendable, and that's that $387,000. Last year, that was $288,000, so it went up a little bit. And what non-spendable is it's amounts, revenues that have been recognized and you've collected it, or you have it in your fund balance, but you can't spend it because it's like prepaids or inventory, or in this case, the majority of it is what we call advances. So they're loans to other funds of the village. And two of them make up the bulk of this, about 352 of that 387,000. 222,000 of it is a loan that's been going down each year to your TIF 2, okay? So as TIF 1 has been doing really well, it's collecting that increment, it shares it with TIF 2, okay? And then TIF 2 has the ability to pay back your general fund. And by all projections, it looks like it's gonna be able to pay it all back, okay? And there is a large debt payment coming up in, I think, 2 years that's gonna set that back a little bit, but again, the increment's been coming on strong. And then TIF 1's debt is gone, so that's gonna help too. A lot of factors playing in, but no concerns there. But this year, so that went down a little bit, but what drove it up when you compare it to last year is the ambulance fund is now leaning on or borrowing from your general fund. It's incurred a deficit for the last, for this last year, and so that's in the amount of $143,000. So it's gotta come from somewhere, so it's coming from the general fund at this point in time. The next component is that assigned fund balance, and that's $365,000. There's a whole bunch of details in the financial statements on page 47 of what makes that up. About $103,000 of it, it's what you budgeted for to use or spend down your fund balance during 2008, where we are now. There's a timing issue related to the payment that comes over from the utility, the payment of lieu of tax. But then there's a whole bunch of other things in there, some DARE funds, K-9 funds, things that the village does a nice job of setting aside or saving money for, accrues a little bit of interest, and they get tracked individually here by village staff. And then whatever's left is called unassigned, so that's at 1.1 million, which went down a little bit from last year of 1.2. Overall, your fund balance in the general fund went up about 56,000. So when you compare it to the 1.8, 1.9 million dollars, it essentially broke even. Okay. Yeah, any questions on that? Okay. That's a healthy fund balance, as you're going to see on the next page, page 2, because what we do each year is we take that unassigned or unrestricted fund balance and we compare it to the expenditures in that same fund. And that gives you a benchmark that it's kind of telling you, okay, if we didn't collect any more money at the end of the year, how long could we continue to pay the bills? And for the village at the end of the year, it was about 47%. So for about 6 months, it could continue to pay bills out of that unrestricted fund balance that exists there. Okay. You can see how that charts out compared to other places that we audit of your size. Those are those green, it's kind of light on here, but those green triangles. So about 33% last year. There's always a 1-year lag in data. But it's hovered right around that 31 to 33%. And the village has been going up a little bit, took a little dip this year. I know you've been budgeting to spend that down. That's a really solid number. What that does is it allows you to have the flexibility when you do set the budget that you can dip into it if needed. If there's other kinds of things, such as the TIF fund or the ambulance fund that need some help temporarily, they can lean on the general fund as well. And there's a few other reasons that make a strong case for having a solid fund balance, which you do have. It also is, I'm not a bond person, but it's believed that that helps your bond rating as well, if they can see that, which saves you money in interest costs. Any questions on that page? Certainly no concerns. And then a couple slides on your debt. And 2 ways to look at debt is The first one is how much debt you have outstanding at the end of the year, and the next one is how much do you pay in debt service. So when you take a look at the amount of debt that's outstanding, a couple ways you can view it is how much of our debt limit have we used up, and that's the graph on the left, and then how much debt, GO debt, do we have outstanding. And this is not any revenue debt that may exist in utility funds. But it's all your general obligation debt, okay, all your GO debt, and compares it to your population and your debt capacity. So when you take a look at your debt limit, the village is that dark blue bar, and probably the most relevant one to compare it to is, excuse me, is a red one, and that's the median point for other municipalities across the state from data collected by the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance. They have the annual publication, that Municipal Facts. So you can see you're a bit higher than other places of your size as far as using up your debt limit. You're about 60% at the end of the year, but when you compare it to the debt per capita, you're a little bit less than average. Okay? There's a lot of factors that go into this, including the amount of debt you have out there for TIFs. I think coming out here years ago, it was up in the upper 80s when you first opened up your TIF. So that has a big impact, and it does the same on other places too. Did you have a question?
No, I
No,
just
okay,
scratched my head,
gotcha,
sorry.
all right,
I
okay.
have a
Yeah,
question.
okay.
So, I mean, if I look at the top line, it says about 5 million. So it looks like in 2016, I mean, our debt was 4.8 million and now it's 5.4. Is that correct?
For the amount that's held in the village's governmental funds, correct. So there's also about $500,000 in utility funds. So at the end of 17, you actually had a net amount of GO debt outstanding of about 5.8 million.
Do you know why it went up that much year
Yeah,
over year?
yep. The village typically
file
issues
every
debt
other
every other year
Oh, okay.
for street projects and such.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it was,
So that would, okay. so
Yeah, which is actually pretty
1.9,
common of
5.4.
places I audit of your size. Every 2 to 3 years, they'll issue debt, and they'll use those proceeds and spend them down.
Okay.
You can avoid arbitrage that way and such. Okay. So no concerns. I think the more important factor here, and I'm sure I mention this to you every year, is not how do you compare to other places, but how do you compare to yourself from year to year. If you saw these dark blue lines going up and up, that might be more concerning. But it's obviously being managed well. All right, the next page, page 4, takes a look at, again, how much debt, principal and interest do you pay during the year compared to your other governmental expenditures. So this is non-utility stuff. And we take your total principal and interest and we divide it by your non-capital expenditures, and you spend about 23% in debt service. And it's been pretty consistent from year to year in that lower 20%. And you can see how that compares to other places. Again, that's the green dots, so you're just a tad higher. And in general, bond rating agencies will recommend trying to keep that around 20% or less. So you're just a tad above that too. But again, very, very steady. And I'm sure you work with your bond or your bond company too, others, to keep that at a manageable level. Okay? All right, page 5 and 6 kind of work together to take a look at the revenues in your general fund. I guess the story here on page 5 is it's very consistent, very steady from year to year as far as what you bring in on a percentage basis when you compare taxes to intergovernmental, which are state aids and such, your shared revenues, expenditure restraint. About 80% of your revenues come in to the general fund between taxes and aids, okay, grants, which has been the case for year after year. This makes it much easier to budget if you had a lot of volatility. I don't have a lot of places that do, but I have a couple. That becomes a much harder thing to get your hands around. You can see how it's made up in a pie chart on the next page.
I just have a comment
Yes.
on that page.
Mhm.
I mean, there's nothing to do about it, but you can see that it's trending up, the village, residents are paying a higher percentage of the taxes compared to the government. I don't know, intergovernmental, you know what I'm saying, it's just flip-flop a little bit, just. it's
It
trending
is.
up.
It is. It's interesting. Most places taxes are higher.
Right.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, those are usually reversed. Those are always the top two, but in most cases, the taxes are higher for places that I go to.
That's a good point.
Shared revenue, that's what it is.
And you have kept your tax rate very steady throughout the years. Page 7, this is,
I just want to go
Yep,
back to that.
go ahead.
Mike, I think what you were saying is the taxes are paying for more of our budget.
Right.
But what really is probably more the case there is our tax revenues increasing because of increased value.
Could be some, but
But shared revenue is flat.
shared revenue's actually dropping too a little bit. You know, not a ton, but just the percentage, a little bit of growth, okay.
Yep.
I think that's the way it's gonna be in the future, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Sorry.
No, thanks for clarifying that. And then on page 7, it looks at your general fund expenditures. And again, relatively flat, once again. And you can see public safety and public works make up the majority, about 68% of the expenditures of the general fund. And it's been like that for the last couple of years.
I have a question about this. I
Yeah.
mean, they're usually pretty close, but the spend is always higher than the revenue. Is that right, or is there more to it than that?
It's, so the spend by function, you mean?
No, if I look, okay, so 2017, spend to $3.2 million, revenue $3 million.
Yeah, what you don't see on this, that's a good point. So what you don't see on this is kind of below the line revenues. So there's a very large amount that comes in called payment of lieu of tax from your utility fund, the water fund.
Okay.
And that's 160?
So like
Okay.
a water bill, you mean?
It's,
No?
yeah, it's based upon the assessed value. It's a
And
calculated
that's included in
amount.
the expenditures, but it's not included in the revenue?
It's not, there's no expenditure related to it, except for the water fund, there is. But
Well,
it,
then that wouldn't really answer the question, though. I mean, the expenses look higher than the revenues.
they are for operations. They absolutely are, right?
So we operate at a deficit every year?
Yes, and I can, which is really common. And then there's, think of governmental accounting as, each of the funds are like a silo,
Mhm.
but there are shifting of funds between them.
Mhm.
And there's always, by state statute, a shift of the water revenues to collections over to the general fund to, just, in a sense, subsidize those operations. And so, yes, it operated at a deficit of 191,000, the
Sure,
general
sure.
fund. But then it brought in 247,000, most of that being from the water
So
fund.
if you look at the water, it's the opposite. Revenues exceed expenditures, and that difference gets put into the general fund? And that's how it all balances out, is that what you're saying?
It does. The general, actually, but the water fund actually had a surplus at the end of the
Right,
year.
right, right.
Even before that transfer went over.
So that's how it all balances out, because
Yep.
the water is over?
Yes.
We make more than we spend on that side, and on this side, we spend more than we make?
But
Were you gonna say something?
what John's referring to is the payment in lieu of taxes. That's
Mhm.
basically, the water fund is not taxable.
Mhm.
So based on the value of the water department, the water utility.
Plant and everything.
The plant and all the capital that's involved, there's a payment made to the general fund based, it's kind of like a tax payment, like a property tax payment to the
Okay.
general fund.
Okay.
But that revenue is not recognized in this.
It is not. That's right.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
It
And
really
if it
doesn't-
didn't make that payment, the general fund would probably lose money every year for most places throughout the
Oh,
state.
okay.
Yeah, it's a big part of
It really
it.
doesn't care how profitable the utility is.
No.
It's just
No.
like, you say it's a tax bill.
It's a tax.
It's a
Okay,
tax
'cause
bill.
we own that, and it would've got property taxes
So,
anyway.
because the utility doesn't pay taxes.
Sure.
You know, because it's tax exempt, so it's kind of like a payment, it's called payment in lieu of pilot, payment in lieu of
Sure.
taxes, so.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yep, yep, good question. And your wastewater fund makes a similar type of payment over.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
all right, good. Any more questions on the general fund revenues or expenses? Okay. All right, so then, page 9. I mentioned a few things about the utility funds. And page 9 is your water fund, since we were talking about that. And this focuses on the operational results of that fund. So the data at the top shows the gallons sold. And you can see it actually went down from about 120,000 down to 113,000. Most of that is attributable to some breaks in the, or leaks in the main back in 2015 and 16. So actually 17's kind of getting it back to more of the norm, I guess you can say. closer to 2013 and 14.
And it has to do with the public authority. If you look at the public authority numbers
Yeah.
for 15 and 16, they're extremely high compared to the years around them. What that is the town of Fond du Lac is considered a public authority customer in our system. And when they have leaks in their system, because it goes through a master meter, they end up paying us for that. When we have leaks in our own system, we don't have a meter to trace it, so there's really no payment for that. But in the town of Fond du Lac, they pay us for lost water out there. They had some pretty bad leaks in 15 and 16, which elevated the public authority number quite a bit. And now what John's explaining is that this year their lost water in the town was very low, so back to where it should be. So that's the reason for it.
And then if you take a look at the graph on the right-hand side, that shows your water utility operation. So the revenues are in the blue. And this is the second full year of the rates that you implemented back January 1st, 16. Does that sound right, Nick?
Yep.
Okay. So 2 years worth, and so you can see the revenues are very consistent, $976,000 in 16, $971,000 in 17, which is kind of the nature of water operations. Pretty consistent, pretty flat these days, unless you do change the rates. And then the red are the expenses, and that went down, and that was due to entering a fixed rate well maintenance contract, which ended up saving you some money on that. Overall, the equity, like I mentioned earlier, increased in the water fund by about $125,000. And that does include a non-cash item, which is the depreciation on that plant. Okay. So it's covered its complete cost, which is great. Page 10 takes a look at the income statement results, specifically the rate of return. So you have an authorized rate of return right around that 7%, and that's that red line. And the blue line is where you ended up. So if you think of the authorized as more of a benchmark or a target where you want to end up when you calculate your actual rate of return, for the last few years, you've actually just been above it, which is good. If you had a lot of leakage and things like that, you would be below. Page 11, still in the water fund. Another way to look at it, the health of that fund, is how much unrestricted cash do you have on hand. So typically, utility funds will have some restricted cash, which is required by the bond documents, and they'll have some unrestricted, which is kind of for operating results, kind of like a cash in our bank that we can use to pay our bills and such. And you want to have enough in there to be able to meet the next billing cycle, which for you is quarterly. So you want to ideally have at least 3 months worth of unrestricted cash. Last year in 2016, you're right at the amount because I think you used some capital or something. In 17, it went up a little bit. Okay, so you're back up to about 4.5 months, which is a good healthy number. Goal is to maintain, like I said, at least 3 months. And then at the bottom, you can see kind of a different analysis, and that is a calculated amount to determine how much of your capital assets or your plant is being financed through earnings versus debt. And ideally, you want to have at least 50% or more financed through earnings, and you're at 71%. Okay. So again, that's a good number. And it has been for quite a few years. And then lastly, for the water fund, on page 12, this is more of a compliance kind of analysis, where the revenue bonds that exist in this fund require a certain amount of net earnings. And you can see the required is in the red and where you're at in the blue. So you're well above that, no concerns there. Page 13 is now starting taking a look at the wastewater utility fund. And this is simply your revenues and expenses charted out over the last 5 years. You can, again, see your revenue is very, very consistent from year to year, but your expenses do bounce around a little bit. They're up about $286,000 this year compared to last year due to an increase in the treatment charges. But you still had a gain in that fund of about $85,000. So,
Just a quick note on that, if you recall, the city of Fond du Lac is no longer doing a budget and a true-up. They're only using prior year's numbers for the current year budget. So we kind of knew that 2017 was going to be a pretty high year for treatment costs because they were basing it off of 16, the numbers, which was high. So we paid quite a bit more last year than we normally had for treatment costs. I just actually today found out we have an $80,000 true up from that last year. So we're getting $80,000 back this year for those treatment expenses, which were right around $460,000 or $480,000. So that won't get reflected until next year's utility into 2018 numbers. But that's a large portion, like John mentioned, of why that went to $286,000.
So what-
That sounds right.
What do we expect it to be in 2018?
Well,
Still this high then?
no, I don't expect it to be that high, but, because now this year's numbers will be based on last year's, which will be lower.
Okay.
But, you know, we don't know, there was a couple of also last year, there was a couple of large sewer repairs, if you recall, one by the school, and there was one out on Highway 45 that bumped those numbers up last year also. So we expect it to go back down.
Okay.
Thanks, Nick. Page 14 is, once again, taking a look at the unrestricted cash on hand. And the wastewater utility fund has just shy of 7 months. So again, a very healthy number. And as far as its plant, you can see it's been anywhere from 76% all the way up to 91% right now. A big factor in that component is how much debt does the fund have outstanding, and that's been getting paid down. And on page 15, again, more of a compliance analysis, taking a look at your actual net earnings in the light blue versus the required in the dark blue. No concerns there either. And I didn't include any graphs in here on the stormwater fund, but I can tell you that the net income in that fund was increased. It increased by $68,000. It did spend down its cash, though, by about $78,000. It used about $167,000 in cash for capital needs. And you know, either you do that or you issue debt. And that's kind of the way stormwaters typically do operate, is they'll build and build and build, and then they'll periodically have to spend that down. So no concerns there either. And then the last page is a summary of what we include in those TIF reports that I mentioned that we prepare for the village each year, and it gets submitted to DOR by the village. And TIF 1 on the left, TIF 2 on the right, you can see where each one of those ended up. These are since creation, and TIF 1 was able to share about $73,000 in increment this year with TIF 2, so it's cumulatively shared or helped out TIF 2 in the amount of $430,000 as of the end of 17. TIF 2 is still negative, like I said, about $222,000, and it also has that kind of looming bond payment of $695,000 in 2020 and 21. TIF 1 also just passed its expenditure period after all these years, so.
And the question, so we can't take on any more costs, I mean, project costs? So that's pretty much,
Yep.
we have the 23 to pay for it, but we can't take no more.
That's
costs.
right.
I mean, let's say some improvements out there or something.
Yeah, that's the state statutes that limit that. Yep. So it's really in the period where it's gonna pay off its debt and close up.
Incentives out there.
Well, the incentives are the property itself,
Yeah.
so there's no expense there. It's
But
just-
if a road needed to be extended at some point, that's a discussion that can no longer be a TIF expense, so you have to make sure it makes sense from a general fund standpoint.
Can we just charge it to TIF too?
You didn't hear
Be a
that.
long,
Nice.
long road.
Good try. So,
Thinking
your
outside
TIF
the
has been
box.
very successful, though, that's for sure, and that's good to see over all these years. Any questions on the materials I just went through? I don't have any concern about the village's financial condition, that's for sure. I also want to mention that everybody here that we work with, Nick, both Darren's, Chuck, especially Chris, do a really, really great job of preparing for us. We are here for a cumulative of 5, 6, 7 days, I think, between prelim and final and the two different teams. We have a utility team that comes out, and then Cameron and I and a couple others. So we ask for a lot of different things, and they're always very well prepared. We have a few entries each year, but they're really minimal. They're 10 or fewer. So you consider the number of transactions that you run through in the village, that's really good. The other report that I won't walk through in detail or anything, but it's called the Communication to Those Charged with Governance and Management. It's the management letter, as it's commonly referred to. We ran through in detail with Chris and Chuck, anything that came up in there. No real concerns, unless people got a chance to look at it and have any specific questions for me.
I think once we get the final, I would distribute that to the,
Okay.
to the board.
Okay, sounds good.
I did get a notice saying that I need to file that report that shows the accounts and the dollar amounts that you provide, kind of the template for it every year. It's a SL something, or I'm not sure what the name of it is. But it's due like May 15th. Is that a hard date?
Oh, that's the Form C we were talking about. Yep,
Okay.
that's been completed.
So will
Yep.
I have something that you provide some kind of a template in the sense?
We do.
with the
We
numbers?
provide the template, and then you just take those same numbers and enter it
Right.
in
Mhm.
Department of Revenue's website.
So will that be something I'll get later this week, or is it
It's-
15th, next Tuesday already?
It's all done.
Oh, it's, okay.
Yeah, Chris
All right.
took care of it.
Okay, thanks.
So, which is good, because there's a 1% per day penalty on
Yeah.
your transportation aids if you don't. So,
Sooner the
we're
better.
sticklers, making sure it doesn't get missed.
Does anybody else have any questions for John?
Well, as John talked about our staff, I'd like to
Yeah.
compliment John and his staff too, Cameron and the people that came, I mean, they're so easy to work with, and, it's, we go back and forth quite often during the day, they get tired of reaching over the door to open the door up in there, but it works out very, very well.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks for having us as your auditors, so.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming. All right, so discussion and possible action on approving 2017 financial report presented by Baker Tilly representatives. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2017 financial report presented by Baker Tilly.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
There we got a motion by King, second by Will. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thanks again for coming, guys.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
All right, moving down to number 2, discussion and possible action on the issue of 2 village board members on the library board.
We kind of talked about this a little bit last meeting, where, because Mike Will has been appointed by the county board to be on the library board, and Ann Price had volunteered to be appointed on the trustee board, which constitutes 2 trustees, and I had put down a couple options in there, and since then, too, I reached out to the county executive to just his feelings on it, because in reality, appointing a county board member onto the village board is really only required in a Class 1 city. Class 1 city being over 150,000 people, so it really wasn't statute-wise necessary, but Mr. Biko, I'm not sure if there's a subcommittee or something, really kind of gave that recommendation that some board members should be on all of the county library boards, just to, not oversee them so much, but be active in them. So when I talked to, or sent an email off to the county executive, Alan Biko, he more or less, I gave him the options, and he said they couldn't really, not that he was recommending, couldn't remove Mike from it, because they had appointed him for a 4-year term, but Mike could resign if he wanted to. 2-year term? 2-year. Mike could resign if he wanted to, and not saying I'm asking him to do that, but just kind of giving the rest of the board the options. The other option, of course, is to have Ann be a non-voting liaison, where she could still go to the board meetings if she wanted to, but not being a voting member, where right now, the way it stood was that both Mike and Ann could vote at the meeting. So that's kind of the background on it.
I have one question. Option number 3 on option number 1, number 3. Am I eligible for that, or would have to be somebody different?
I think to do that, you'd have to resign.
Right, and get reappointed as that.
Yeah, I think it's something to that effect.
I think it's important that village board would have a voting representative on the library. I think that's
Yeah.
important.
That's
I'd have to agree with that.
Um,
Can we just make Mike
I
a
would be-
non-voting member?
I would
That's
be
what
interested in
he's asking.
finishing
Yeah.
off my 2-year term if it's legal. As a non-voting representative for the county.
Do you want me to pursue that with,
See if that's okay.
Mr.
And if it's
Biko?
not, then
Okay, why don't we?
then I would say-
if that's all right with the rest of the board,
Bring it back and
I'll bring it
just-
back with that recommendation and seeing what steps would take to do that.
I'll abstain from, if we're gonna vote here, I'll abstain from it, though.
Okay.
Right?
If we want to just postpone a decision until I have that information.
It's up
we
to you.
don't have to act on it
We don't have
tonight,
another
if that's
meeting for
right.
another
So then,
month and a half.
if you would do that, then there would still be a trustee that would be voting?
Would be
Yeah.
Ann.
That's what it-
Yeah.
just making it-
The county would not have a
The
vote.
county wouldn't have a vote.
But I don't think there's nothing that earth shattering.
More of a liaison.
So, it's up, I would be interested in finishing off this 2-year term if it's legal, if it's proper.
All right.
So-
As a non-voting representative for the county.
I guess it-
Was John Duffy was on the board before, isn't that right?
But Mike was not at that.
I was on with John
Fairly recent.
I was with John for a little bit, about
Yeah.
maybe two meetings.
Yeah.
And
At
then he
that point,
pulled
we
that.
didn't realize that
Yeah.
was an issue until Heather
Yeah.
brought it to our attention, so.
Okay.
Okay, so,
So is the board okay with Chuck looking into that? We'll bring it back. All right,
Okay.
cool, thank you. All right, moving down to number 3, discussion and possible action on approving, moving forward with iPads for the village board.
We've talked about this in the past, and it's gonna be kind of hard to show. I'm just gonna pass out maybe a sample of an agenda that I would have, in a sense, for the board members. And what that really is trying to show is that when you bring up a document on an iPad, and this is the iPad that I'm recommending, I had set it up more or less for display more than anything. As it thinks about it. It's as simple as that. What's supposed to happen? There it is. What it does is it brings up a PDF, which then contains like the first page, and by touching it on the bottom, it shows all the page numbers along the bottom side, so that whenever we're on a topic, we don't really know where we're at, you can go and say, oh, this is really on page 5, and you can find it, touch it, and it comes up onto your screen. And then, it's and so, what I liked about this, it's a decent size, if you, of course, just like your phone, it'll flip the way you want it to, so, what I guess I'm asking is the fact, do we want to pursue this? And if so, we'd purchase one for all of the board members and probably one for the administrator, just so that they can follow if there's any questions. The other thing that I'd like to do is then also convert everybody to an nfdl.org email address. And here you can look at your emails, and it comes up here and it shows your emails as well. If any board member wants, I can also forward that to your personal email if you really rather just see all of them in one group. I have that capability, so either or, so,
can you do it to both?
yes, it would be in both then.
I mean, you could send it to that iPad and your personal one?
Correct.
Mike, we're not using flags anymore. Is that-
Sorry, Mr. Streeter. All right.
So that's kind of the direction I'd like to see going. They're about $175 each, but I think to get this size screen, that's a decent deal. It's fairly easy to collect all the documents, feed them into this, and as soon as that happens, if it'd be as early as a Friday morning or something, you'd have them. And all you really need is in your home to have a Wi-Fi connection. And then if it's on and there's a Wi-Fi connection, it automatically pops into you.
Chuck, do we know what the school district pays for them, their
I don't.
iPads?
I
Did we, could we possibly just, if you can give Aaron a call and just see if we could partner with them, maybe get a deal on them? I don't know if that's possible
Sure,
or
I
not.
can.
And if you did that, they fix all theirs in-house.
Do they?
Yeah, they have kids working, they got quite a shop or a computer
Okay.
shop, so, if there's any issues, maybe it's a partnership, because we're always looking for something to
Absolutely.
partner with the school district, and I'm not sure what they pay for theirs. I don't know, but they look about the same size.
Okay, I can
But-
find that out.
And I can tell you, the iPads work pretty good, and usually, what Aaron would do is just give us an agenda like this for every meeting would be on your desk.
Yeah.
So then you could just scroll through and just reference this as you go down, so it just made it a little bit easier, so, and it does work. It works pretty well.
I think if there's anything, let's say around budget time, or even when we get into the personal policy manual, those might be times when you really should have hard copy, just you can, much easier to make notes and scratch on, where if it's just rolling through the agenda, looking at documents, like even tonight with our financial statement, that might be something you'd rather have a piece of paper on, so it's a little bit easier to follow, but 90% plus, it's something where you're just kind of paging through the documents that were looked at.
Keith?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think it's a good idea, you know, if you could look into that, the school, but it saves a ton of paper. I mean, you know, we kill a lot of trees, and then the police department doesn't have to run around and give us packets, and, you know, this is the 21st century.
Anybody else have any comments on whether you like them or not, or do you have one for the county board, Mike? Oh, I'm sorry. Darren?
I actually, a comment and a question. The comment is, you might want to be careful about having the information forwarded to your personal email accounts because of open records laws. It doesn't open up your entire account, but it can create monster headaches for you if somebody ever does file an open records request, improving that you've given them everything that you've ever shared through your personal account. So it might be easier just to go with the nfdl.org email account. And then the question was going to be, will staff members continue to receive the hard packets then?
Yes.
So, okay.
Mike?
Okay, I mean, at the county, we have the bigger ones, the iPads. They were expensive. They're like $1,000 a piece. And that was probably.
Did you vote for
2 years
those?
ago. What?
Did you vote for those?
It's part of the budget. But again, everything gets directed through our county email. Nothing goes to our personal. Sometimes it's hard to link up, and there's firewalls they put in. There's some special ways to access your email and stuff like that. It's gonna be a little cumbersome, but maybe the village has something better.
Well, this actually goes right to this, so I mean, it's not like there is a way right now you could, from your home PC, go on and find your emails if there was something in nfdl.org.
No,
But
Yep.
this way, it's right here, so.
okay.
I like that a little better.
I do like the paper, but it's the way of the future. I get it, but that's just who I am, so.
Oh, yeah, Mike? Nick?
I was just gonna actually ask that question too. Would it make sense, I didn't think about this earlier either, but would it make sense to at least the department heads that are normally required to be at all of these meetings to also have one? If the board's all gonna have one, as far as just following along, it might be easier, I'm thinking.
Couldn't you, I mean, if you could get, you know, if you use your computer though, that's the same thing. I mean, not to point your computer, but, I mean, it would be on your computer in a PDF form. You're just emailing a PDF, right?
Yes, that's what
If we
it
had
is.
a laptop, I mean, do you have?
Assuming that they have a laptop to use.
No, you have a laptop.
Yeah.
I mean, you would.
I wasn't talking about me.
Oh, okay.
And actually, Nick, 99% of his time is on a desktop. He doesn't use a laptop.
Okay.
so.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Keith?
Thank you. I kind of agree with Nick. I think that the staff that come here should be included in that also, that they could get information or whatever. It's just my opinion.
It would make putting the package together a lot easier. of
Yes,
course.
that's,
Mike?
But I would agree, I mean, 175 is pretty reasonable. I think when the school first came out, they were $450, $500
Oh, yeah.
a piece, but I don't know what they pay now. But
Yeah,
that
I don't either.
175, you said, Chuck, that's pretty,
175.
that's pretty reasonable.
That's with this carrying case.
Yeah, it's,
and
would you require them not to do any personal business on this, or would it just be,
I would say so, yes.
I would
think
hope so,
sure.
but I would
Yeah.
recommend that, but okay.
I think that would be very true.
So do we want to vote on this tonight, or do we want to check on, like, partnering, or how do we want to proceed?
I'll make a motion to approve, you know, if the purchase of the iPads for the village board members, and let Chuck research it. If it's less money, you know, from the school, go that route, but
I can do that.
leave it in his lap.
Are you including the department heads, or just the village
I
board?
would
this
say the
time?
department heads that show up for the meeting here.
And the village board members? Okay.
The what?
And the village board and department heads that
Yes.
show up for the meetings, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, and I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, got a motion by Will, second by Price. Any other discussion on the iPads? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? All right. Discussion and possible action on approving the position of safety officer for the fire EMS department.
Sorry, I can discuss this. We've never had a safety officer in the past. It is essentially a portion of my duties, and what duties I'd be giving to a safety officer would be improving, working conditions throughout the day, essentially, making sure people are cleaning up after themselves and that our gear is up to standard, that our vehicles are up to standard, so on and so forth. So he'd look through different ways to improving our safety overall. I opened up the position on the 16th of April to see if I would get any interest in it, and closed it on the 30th. I did have one person apply and give me a letter of intent, and that was Pat Stefani. So hopefully we can go forward with this. It'd be beneficial. Some of the roles that I talked to him about doing, responding to a certain amount of calls to make sure that, at structure fires, essentially more large-scale calls where we have structure fires, multi-vehicle accidents, like the gas leak that we had last year that turned into multiple different things, to have him there to make sure that people are operating safely. So that's kind of the background of it. It's been something I've been wanting to do in the past, and I threw the idea out to the membership and didn't have a lot of interest in it. But now I have talked to Pat enough times and asked him enough times if he'd be interested, and he is, so.
Is there any training that you'd be sending this individual to, or do we have everything here that they need? I know Pat was been involved with the department for a while.
Yeah, I went to a safety officer class last fall with Jay Peartree, he's an instructor through Moraine Park, and he offers the class. So it's a potential. It's a state certified class, I believe. I do not believe that we had to pay out of our budget for it. I'd have to look and make sure, but the only real cost would be the monthly stipend, if approved.
Mike?
Questions. It puts that employee or that employee at a kind of a awkward situation to like almost, not spy, but oversee or report shortcomings of the employees and stuff.
He would report directly to me.
I understand that,
And-
but they know he has this, but I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying it probably puts that in, it probably becomes better from you know what I'm saying?
Well, we,
And it
as officers on our
better-
department, they all are safety officers. His role is to oversee and make sure that we're operating safely. It's not so much he's gonna nitpick every little tiny thing that goes on when we're responding to calls or at trainings, but he'll be watching to make sure that we're operating safely.
So why can't we expect this from our officers for this role? I mean, they're already getting a stipend for extra duties.
Yeah, I do expect it out of our current officers, but he'll be able to, implement programs and trainings just based off of safety. That's a huge thing in the fire service, is making sure that, we know what we're doing and we're doing it safely. That is the number one priority, is to get all of our guys back to the station. And he is gonna be able to come up with trainings and opportunities for these guys to ensure of that.
One last comment is that I guess in the future, but maybe we talk about it before you go out and advertise a position or something. I mean, just see if the board supports it. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, my comment.
Keith?
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, you said that you expect that out of your officers, also to be on top of that stuff. Would it be safe to say that with a safety officer, that would be his number one focus, would be the safe operation, making things are done correctly, things like that?
Correct.
Where the officers have a larger scope, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things that they're responsible for.
Yep.
And that they do to where this is going to alleviate a little bit of
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if I
added
get it right in
stress,
my
I
mind.
guess, on, on
Okay, thank
scenes
you.
and whatnot. You know, if there's a ladder
Right.
improperly positioned or something, to that nature, you know, he can let me know.
Because your
If
officers
you-
on site are directing people, they're doing this, they're doing
Correct,
that, I mean,
yeah.
it can be.
I mean,
this
everyone at
guy-
the department technically would be their own safety officer to
Right.
ensure that they're making sure that they're acting and doing things safely. But he would be, you know, that is his job.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And do you have any comments on this item, or?
Well, my only comment is, I mean, it seems like we're kind of already doing this, but you're wanting someone kind of to focus on it.
Correct.
And you think it's necessary?
Just about, yeah, it is.
Is something happening now, I guess, that makes you think that it's necessary?
No, it's something that our department has not had that I want it to have. A lot of departments throughout the country have a safety officer, and it's an important position to have, so.
Go ahead, Mike.
I know it's not a ton of money here, but I think we've added a, you know, full-time fire chief, and we have these new officers and stuff, and, I'm not looking to expand out on that. I understand, I hear what you're saying about this, maybe more focus, but, I'm not
I-
sure. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I agree with Mike. I mean, you know, we're all, I mean, with the officers that we have in charge, I mean, everybody should be focused on safety. And I don't know, I just, I think that's should be everybody's priority, and I know, yeah, I don't know, man, I just like with your position, Jake, I think, you know, you being the one responsible for the safety, I'm hoping everybody's looking out for those, you know, position ladders that are not, you know, in the correct place or anything like that. I guess I wouldn't agree that this is a needed position, that, you know, everybody should be looking out for each other's safety, you know. I mean, that is the, you know, number one priority here, you know, to keep everybody safe, so I'm hoping everybody is doing that. I just don't know how, you know, we can justify paying someone to do something that everybody should be doing in the first place, I guess, would be the way to look at it.
Not everyone pays attention, you know. It is a beneficial position and needed.
Does anybody else have any other comments, or?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mike, or, I'm sorry, Keith.
I don't see an issue with it. I mean, I think to be safe is anything we can do for $600 a year to make things safer. I don't think that's asking a lot.
It is in the budget. So I looked through our budget and payroll through the fire department, and there's substantial amounts of money there to be able to afford it.
One quick question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Was it spelled out in the budget for this position?
No,
Okay.
I did not budget for it.
Go ahead, Ann.
I guess I'm leaning with them towards not needing it, but I guess, I mean, can you sell me on why we need it? I don't understand why we need it, I guess, so that's why I'm leaning towards not. So, did something happen, or?
I guess the scenario, you know, you respond to a scene and we have 5 guys there, and I'm trying to put this together in my head quickly. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, so first engine, let's say it's a structure fire, first engine shows up, gets a hydrant, goes out, put the fire out, they forget to pull a backup line on the engine because their main focus is task number 1, which is put the fire out. So they don't pull a backup line, should be pulled, or they, you know, I already used the ladder thing, or talking about roof ventilation or, using ropes and whatnot, ensuring that knots are tied properly, making sure that people put their, gear on properly.
I still
There's,
don't
I mean, there's a lot of things that he would be able to look at and say, this is how, we need to operate differently to ensure that this is happening. And I guess for me to come out and say that everyone's a safety officer, that's something that I tell my guys to ensure that they act safely, but this person can stand back and monitor the situation at hand and ensure that, people are safe. You know, we lose 100 guys a year, the fire service does, and main priority is safety. A lot of things can transpire on a fire ground, whether or not, where, you know, if you, put somebody in that position, they can alleviate some of those problems.
Any other questions or comments for Jake? Does anybody want to make a motion on any of the options that we have, 1, 2, or 3?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve it. Option number 1. I'll see if I get a second.
We got a second?
So, I got a question, and I don't know if this is the right time to ask or not, but, does the board approve the actual position or the money that goes to it?
I would think that the board would have the authority to approve spending money on a position.
Okay,
I would think that would be the right
Mm.
approach.
because I don't
It's a-
think
wasn't in
option
the
number
budget.
2 is,
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
viable.
I would think if we're gonna approve a stipend, I think the board would have to approve it.
Yes.
That would
that's
be
I
my
guess
2
what I was
cents.
saying.
I mean, if they wanted to assign an officer to that and not give him a stipend, you surely can. But that's just what I think, so.
Ann?
So are you saying that someone on scene is always the safety officer and then they're not fighting fires?
Correct.
Couldn't you do that, I mean, without a stipend, if you're just sending an extra person there then?
Not, I mean, he'll have other duties to do
Mm-hmm.
around, you know, when it comes to, trainings and planning our trainings, and requirements on being there, more often than not, responding to calls more often than not.
Do you take care of that now? Or is it nobody, it's just not being done?
Yeah, it's essentially on me right now. And it doesn't take the, responsibility away from myself whatsoever. When it comes down to if somebody gets injured or killed on a scene, the responsibility is still mine, but he's there to help prevent those from happening. There's a lot of stuff that I have to do, or, you know, a chief officer, captain, assistant chief, that we have to do when we're on a call that are not 110% of the time, are we looking at every single ladder that's on, you know, the building, so.
Yeah, I guess I question that also. I mean, with being a volunteer department, you know, this individual wouldn't, you know, I'm assuming not be available for every single call. And that's why, you know, like with your safety officers and with you, I mean, that's why, you know, we hired you as our chief, you know, to look out in this aspect and the guys that you have under you to follow those safety procedures. Cause I know you guys train a lot and you know, you try to, like you had talked about, like, you know, getting your gear on right and position the ladders right. And I'm assuming you guys are, you know, learning that in training. So it's not that in any means. I mean, I've been involved with safety at my work too, where I volunteered to be a safety captain. And I mean, you want everybody to look out for that safety. It's not that we're not concerned about your safety. It's just that personally, I just feel that all the folks that we have in place are all part of that safety thing, and it, you know, that one safety person, even if you'd approve that position, couldn't be there all the time. So that, you know,
I
on
can't
every
be
scene.
here all the time.
Right,
You
but I
know,
mean, your
I'm a
officers, you
part-time
know.
fire chief
Right,
and
but
full-time
you're,
on the ambulance, so.
but your officers too. I mean, it falls on everybody in a volunteer service. I guess that's just the way that I'm looking at it, and that's why I just feel like, you know, safety is everybody's concern, you know, that I'm hoping everybody is looking out to be as safe as possible. That's just, how I look at it, but, so we had a motion to approve, there was not a second, so that motion fails. Is there another motion that someone wants to make for one of the options?
We just leave it at that, can't we?
Yes.
Okay. Just that the motion died, and, okay, so no action. All right. Any communications? Any unfinished business? Any new business? I don't know if this is new business or not, but with the dedication they had for Early Learning Center, it was really nice to see that, you know, Nick and Pete and Chuck and Mike came out, and I was there also for the dedication. It was pretty cool. They had the cranes operating in the background, and the kids sang a construction song, and had a state representative, Fiden, was there also, so that was pretty nice. So is everything going well with that whole project so far?
Yeah,
So-
besides it being very wet.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and you can see our staff has good rapport with the school district and with C.D. Smith. So thanks, everybody, for coming out. That's a nice project that we could kick off. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I mean, I just want to expand on the new business. When we talked about it early in the process here about, you had mentioned about, we were talking about the library, getting notification about the meeting, stuff like that. You have a calendar on the website, you know, right? I don't know if the library's on there, but, you know, that with the county, all the board members gets a calendar once a month, but let's say if the MSAC has a meeting or
Okay.
some special thing with the fire department. I don't want to create a lot of extra work for anybody, but if it's just an email that went out or just a calendar so that somebody, you know, just
Sure.
like the meeting you have with the,
Residents.
no, with the city, with the water.
OSG.
PSC.
OSG, I'm just saying.
OSG.
Just a thought, okay?
But
I'm
that's
not gonna
definitely
bring
something we
anybody
can.
Much extra work, but, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw someone were looking for some pictures for Janine to do that quote for North Fundy Fest. There's a lot of stuff that I've seen, like through the village, used to have a calendar just like that with all the meetings, you know, senior center and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's a good idea. Any other new business? Okay, old business. Ordinances, discussion and possible action on approving ordinance 2018-4, an ordinance establishing a municipal court. So I need a motion to approve ordinance 2018-04.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2018-04.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
Got a motion by Ann, second by Mike, to approve ordinance 2018-04, an ordinance establishing a municipal court. Can I have a roll call, please?
Keith?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Administration, number one, discussion on review of the personnel policy manual.
As you've seen in many of the weekly reports, I, along with a number of staff, have been working through the personnel policy manual, and we discussed, you know, how we're gonna actually roll that out to the board, and rather than, the first initial thought was to have all, let's say, 30 chapters done and hand you the book. But, and the thought behind that was that if you get into chapter 28, and all of a sudden that refers back to something in chapter 2 that's changed, and the board has already reviewed it, and, but, you know, I think we're getting to the point where we're not really doing a lot of that as we talk about it, where we refer back to a prior chapter, and we felt we just needed to get this started with the board. So this was the first attempt, and there's kind of a color coding, which you see here, that kind of helps identify changes, any additions. There's still a couple questions maybe out there, and then I also logged each day that we actually ended each discussion. We are meeting weekly. This first 8 chapters, if you want to call it that, I think is not a lot of chapters that maybe generated a lot of discussion, but it gives you a flavor as to what we're doing, and, you know, a lot of, I'll just use an example where they said, they used the word his, meaning that they're only men that work here, boys, so he changed that to their, you know, and stuff like that, or some of these possible changes are reflecting maybe more of what's reality of what's happening. So that in a sense what we're trying to capture, and the thought then is how do we want to start discussing it at the board level? A couple of the options are put it at the end of the agenda when we have a regularly scheduled meeting and we allot 30 minutes. When the 30 minutes are done, we're done with the meeting and with how far we got. The others is, another possibility is to pick a non-scheduled day rather than the first and third Monday, maybe the third Monday. That's all we have on the agenda is talk about the policy manual. So those are just some things that we want to throw out for discussion and see how we're going to proceed. You know, we're, as a staff, we're going to continue to work through, I think we're up into the chapters 18 or 19, yes. And so, you know, we've got quite a lead on it, but we're running into some chapters. In reality, we had two weeks in a row, we ended up just talking about one chapter, just because it generated a lot of discussion, you know, and a lot of good discussion, so. I guess I'm open to thoughts as to how you want to proceed. Again, we'll go from there.
Go ahead, Mike. What about if once a month we would meet at 5:30 before one of the meetings, and it would force us to be done before our board meeting? I mean, just a thought. I mean, it'll force us to move along, and I don't know how 5:30 works for everybody, but then we would surely stay on track.
We could do that for both meetings on a month too, I mean,
I don't
just
know, once a month, I think they should get on track, but I don't
Okay.
necessarily think there's that much to talk about, but I guess we can have one and decide if we need to
I
have one.
suspect there's gonna be some topics that are gonna generate some discussion.
Just,
Yeah.
just one
But no,
idea, I
think
mean, a
that's-
special night we could, but it's, everybody's nights are pretty
I
important.
think that's a
so.
great idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it might be,
It's
Go
hard
ahead.
for me to get here at 5:30 on the first Monday.
That's fine.
So-
Mhm.
yeah, and I never know with overtime either. Sometime I'm cutting it pretty close, like punching out at 4:45 and zipping over here, so. And that might be a little tight. I mean, if it would work after the meetings, that would be cool. Just like you said, you know, sometimes it generates some discussion. And we could just, I think in the past, if we used to go like maybe try to hit 1 through 5 or 1 through 3 if you think it's gonna be chapters that are gonna create some discussion. Go ahead, Mike.
Would we continue on in a board meeting, or would we end the board meeting and have just the general discussion about the policy? You know, I mean,
I had originally thought we'd continue it as part of the board meeting, but that's not necessarily, it has to be either.
I just asked.
Another good question. I mean, it definitely, it's not like any of these, I think, at some point, again, just my first thought, it's not like, okay, we're gonna approve chapter 1, sign off on it, we're done. I think we go through it where we feel the whole book, the whole chapters are clean the way we want them, changing whatever is recommended or what the board wants to do, and when we're done, that's when we recommend as a whole. If we have to approve each chapter, then we'd have to leave it as part of the board meeting. I would think so. Keith, you're pretty quiet over there.
Doesn't matter to me, before or after.
You wanna say like after on the third, on the second meeting of the month, or?
That work for everybody? All right.
Nick, you have something?
It just, I feel like this should be part of the board meeting, the discussion on this.
Televised?
Well, just part of the board, the agenda,
Yeah.
it should be part of the
I
agenda.
mean, it would be televised. then.
Whether it's televised or not, that's not what I was concerned about. It's just that, is the board meeting and discussing with personnel policy, it probably should be during, at least a part of the meeting.
Like at the end of the meeting and just continue.
Be part of the minutes.
Part of the
too.
meeting.
It'd be part of the minutes too.
Keith?
Yeah, I would think if there was any action or any changes that the board would want, we
Got
would
that part of the
probably have
record.
to be in a meeting, correct?
Yeah, make it part of the record. I agree with that. So we want to shoot when we start.
21st.
It works for me.
All right.
Everybody okay with that, starting the 21st? Okay.
Be after, the last item on the agenda and would be as part of the board meeting.
Go ahead, Mike.
Couple things, I mean, the department heads wouldn't have to stick around, would they? Would you require them? It's up
To be honest with you, they expressed some interest that they might.
Okay.
You know, just, you know,
I'm just
Yeah.
asking questions.
I
Next
think you will have
question-
seen some there. Yeah.
Next question is, have you looked at any other municipalities' personnel policy? Ours is dated, there's no question about that, and we rolled it together with our union contracts. We kind of rolled some language in there, so I hope we're looking at some others. I know I don't want to messy it up any more than it probably is already, but.
I think there's a lot of similarity, but I did, you know, and sometimes when a question comes up on how our policy is written, I will try to search out other municipalities, even, you know, the city of Fond du Lac and that. And, one of the things that is gonna change, and it's a recommendation of McClone, where as a brokers, we're gonna take all of the benefits out of here and really have a benefit handbook. That means every year, whatever benefits are negotiated with health insurance and whatever might change, that's put into this handbook, and then that's what gets approved by the village board. That way you're not changing half a dozen chapters in this, you know, that says, you know, with health insurance, refer to handbook or something like that. So that is something that was recommended, and they've already produced one of them for us, just as an example of what it looks like. So we're gonna adopt that recommendation. All right, I'll put it on the agenda as the last item, and we'll see how the 30-minute rule works, you know, see, I mean, how we can do one, just like when we have our staff get together, if it's 5 minutes to 12 and we chew off, try to do another chapter that goes to 20 after we do it, you know, things like that, so we'll see how
Ann?
it goes.
I won't be here on the 18th, that's just a heads up, so, of June.
The 21st, or the 18th, that's it,
Yep.
okay. All right,
Anybody else?
all right, thank
I
you.
have a question.
Ann.
The interviews for the open, are we doing that on the 17th of May?
I thought it was the 16th, wasn't it?
Was it Wednesday or Thursday? Did we decide on a date? I don't remember.
I thought I remembered it being one or the other. I think somebody told me it was like the 16th, but I'm not sure now.
So I was just wondering if we had decided or not.
I think it was 16 or 17, tentative.
Yeah, we did, that's what I put in the announcement, if you want to call it that.
Okay, so we're gonna get resumes or whatever till the 11th, is that right?
That's correct.
And then you'll let us know, so I guess, if we could do the 17th, I guess, my daughter gets done with college on the 16th, and I was gonna go pick her up that day.
On the 16th.
Yeah,
17th,
but I don't know, if that works for everybody, if not, I mean, I could go get her before, so, do you guys wanna talk about what day?
The 17th works for me, either day works for me.
Does one day not work for anyone?
I won't be here on the 17th.
would you on the 16th or not either? one?
Yeah.
No, that's fine, I'll just go get her early then, I think, and I'll just be back in time, cause would we do it at like 6 o'clock like we normally
Probably,
do?
probably.
Okay, no, I can make that work.
Does that work for you, Mike, on the 16th? And
Okay.
Keith, 16th. Do you have something else, Keith?
No, I'm sorry.
All righty. All right. Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Need a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Ann, second by Keith. To adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.